Hello everyone and welcome back to the Canary Central channel, and what a couple of days that has been for Norwich City during the Easter period, as Norwich City draw up against Portsmouth and get an incredible win up against second place Millwall. And if we're going to talk about what's going to come up with the Ipswich derby, it looks like it could be a ferocious game, as this could be a big decider whether this season under Philippe Clement it has been a massive improvement, and so far it has, with us getting 4 points in our last 2 games, which is a massive success, I'd argue. I think it does definitely take us out of the playoff race. I know I've sort of been saying that for the last couple of times I've spoken on here before, because there has been points so far where it does look like we could get into that playoff position, but I think now it is completely ruled out. I would argue that there's probably about a 0.1% chance that we will get into that playoff position, but there is no doubt that I think we could finish 8th, 7th, potentially, if we could push it, maybe 6th and get into that playoff position, but I still don't think we could. But hey-ho, because after that Southampton win against Wrexham 5-1, I think that solidifies their position in the playoffs in that 6th place spot, and Wrexham probably still potentially looking like they could just about scrape it in there. But if we go back to Norwich City with that incredible win up against Millwall, in what was, I would argue, Philippe Clement's best ever game in charge of Norwich City, with the passing play looking so fluid compared to what it was like up against Portsmouth, which I would argue is the contrast to how Norwich played up against Portsmouth at home, which was probably Clement's worst game in charge, I'd argue, for the Canaries, if we remove that Birmingham City defeat at St Andrews. But I think that win up against Millwall does show that we have the potential to defeat even the best clubs in the Championship, as shown, as we've done before, up against the likes of Coventry as well throughout the course of this season. But the passing was so fluid, and Pelle Matson is certainly on fire, and I think he has the potential of winning Player of the Season, I think you could argue. He scored 3 goals in 3 games, has come back from injury looking absolutely ferocious, and I don't know what the medical team told him to do, but for some reason he is just rejuvenated, coming back immediately back into form, scoring against Charlton, scoring against Portsmouth, and scoring up against Millwall. And could he do an absolutely incredible performance up against Ipswich? Who knows, as it's going to be the midfield battle potentially between Pelle Matson and Marcelino Nunes, and that saga has absolutely continued to spew on. As he hasn't played as many games as I think he probably was expected to play for the Tractor Boys, but I think when Nunes left to join the Tractor Boys for £10 million, which was an absolute disaster of a deal, and that was one of Liam Manning's, I think, worst points as Norwich City head coach, and same with Ben Napper. I think that was one of the worst transfer businesses I think that was ever handled, especially towards transfer deadline day, and the reception I think that he will get at Carrow Road, especially after scoring up against Ipswich Town under David Wagner in that incredible season where we did finish 6th in what was a similar position for the Canaries and the Tractor Boys in that fight for promotion. But I think we are a bit out of that at the minute. But Nunes, I think the reception that he is going to get is going to be ferocious, especially with the fans having had that march put into their bloodstream, and that adrenaline will be pumping for them to absolutely scream themselves out at Nunes. I would be surprised if he does start, especially with the somewhat form he has had this season for the Tractor Boys. I would expect him to start on the bench and be subbed on, just as he did last time in the derby. But I still think that the reception he's going to get is absolutely appalling, and it will be interesting to see what he gets. And to be fair, I would boo him, especially for that absolute betrayal that he did towards us. But I think we do have to worry about Ipswich at the moment, especially with the wins that they have still been able to get. That comeback against Birmingham City when we last game week is similar to how we came back up against Millwall, and there are some real star players that we do need to be afraid of, such as Jack Clark, who at this time recording has 14 goals in the Championship, and he looks like an absolute ferocious winger, and I think he's sort of like a ball has signed sort of player, and I think he will be something that we have to watch out for. And I think the back line will be able to cover that because we've got Callum Fisher who could probably easily cover him, especially with Christiane also on the that fullback position, who has now come back now from injury. And I'm not sure if he did play up against Millwall, but I wish him all the best if he can play up against Ipswich in the derby, but I highly doubt that he will. But Kenny McLean looks like he is still at tip-top shape, obviously. He looks absolutely incredible. And with him starting at the right wing position, which was a bit odd for him, he was still able to get those chances into in front of the net, but wasn't able to convert them. Same with players such as Kavis Gordon, who I think lack quality in front of goal. And I think he has lacked quality in front of goal for the majority of the season. Yes, he has scored up against the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Birmingham City, but he hasn't been that consistent striker that we have needed when Yovan Makama and Mo Toure have been out so far this season. And I think I'm glad that Toure has come back, because he looked absolutely incredible in the second half when he did come on up against Millwall. Yes, he didn't score, but he certainly looked a lot more better than Kavis Gordon up front, who Kavis Gordon did miss quite a number of sitters up against Millwall, and I think we could have been 2, 3, 4 goals up if Kavis Gordon had put them in the back of the net. But we were able to come back after that 1-0 setback from Ivanovic for Millwall, but I think we were absolutely incredible. And if we can beat teams that look like they could go into the Premier League, who knows what we can do the next season. I mean, the stats don't lie. We have been the best team since January the 1st. We would technically be top of the table if the season started in January, because we are arguably the best team of 2026 in the Championship. And I have no doubt that we can perform similarly next season. But if we go back to Ipswich, this should be an incredible fight, and hopefully players such as Oscar Schwartau, who was brilliant up against Millwall, could replicate what he did at Portman Road and just replicate his performances over the course of this season, which have been unbelievable. And I think the thing is, we're going to go into this derby hoping for going for a fight. I think Ipswich will probably also be looking in for a big fight, as well as they look to claim that automatic promotion spot, which they have struggled to get all season long, with Middlesbrough and Millwall taking those positions throughout the season, and with Ipswich not having the best start to the season as well. It's not as crazy bad as to how we were at the start, but still, I think Norwich City are ready to get that revenge on Ipswich, and I think Philippe Clement knows that. And I think if Philippe Clement does get the side to beat Ipswich, I think he does deserve manager of the season for the drastic improvement Norwich City have made. I think if we could beat Ipswich, it shows that Philippe Clement's philosophy has certainly worked throughout the last 6 months he has been here, and I think it would show a big success and a massive improvement compared to what it was like under Liam Manning. But yeah, those are my thoughts, and hopefully we can get revenge at Carrow Road in what could be an incredible derby, and I hope it does go well for the Canaries, and hopefully we can get the 3 points out of it and reinstate ourselves as the best team in East Anglia, as we already are. Thank you very much. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Come on, Yellows. Let's beat the Tractor Boys in the derby. Thank you very much. Cheers and goodbye.